From the Uptown Farmers Market, Port Townsend, Washington, September 2010. The Runaway Smile, for Rachel von Leinen. She had a smile you could run away with. A smile blooming sun and soul, marrowstone roses and pasture grasses, ripe blackberries and honest beauty, blue water and red earth. This lady farmer from Mystery Bay, sharing her milkmaid smile and the hawthorn fruits of her alpine goats. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in, whether you're newly here or occasionally or often. I'm so glad you're with me for show 154 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the farm-dotted, farm-friendly coast of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist, Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically. In show 153, we looked at what's in a name, the names we're given or choose for ourselves, and how they actively and unconsciously shape our identity and how others relate to us. The resonance of famous or historic people and places, place names, real to fictional to mythical. The nicknames we give to friends, family members, colleagues. The monikers of our own we give to all kinds of things, from pets to houses to cars and other objects. Not to mention the nameless and unnameable we encounter, we experience, or feel. Well, this week, going down on the farm. An ovation to farming and farmers, to sowing, growing, and harvesting, orchards to corn and wheat fields to vineyards, and a celebration of the spirit of the giving sources and stewards of our daily sustenance, nourishing our bodies, our families and communities, our towns and cities, countries and society. So let's graze and muse together on the virtues and value of the land and the people who feed us, who fill us many ways, through a fresh crop of cultural commentary, poetry, and shared inquiry I have for us. Let's begin with a poem by Joyce Sutphin, who I'm quite fond of. She's appeared in other shows for other reasons, other themes. The Farm. My father's farm is an apple blossomer. He keeps his hills in dandelion carpet and weaves a lane of lilacs between the rose and the jack-in-the-pulpits. His sleek cows ripple in the pastures. The dog and purple iris keep watch at the garden's end. His farm is rolling thunder, a lightning bolt on the horizon. His crops suck rain from the sky and swallow the smoldering sun. His fields are oceans of heat where waves of gold beat the burning shore. A red fox pauses under the birch trees. A shadow is in the river's bend. When the hawk circles the land, my father's grain fields whirl beneath it. Owls gather together to sing in his woods, and the deer run his golden meadow. My father's farm is an icicle, a hillside of white powder. He parts the snowy sea and smooths away the valleys. He cultivates his rows of starlight and drags the crescent moon through dark, unfurrowed fields. How beautiful was that? The Farm, from her collection, Straight Out of View. Joyce Sutphin, thank you for that. The Farm. From Wendell Berry, who we'll hear a good deal more from as we go here. Wendell Berry's poem, The Man Born to Farming. The grower of trees, the gardener, the man born to farming, whose hands reach into the ground and sprout. To him the soil is a divine drug. He enters into death yearly and comes back rejoicing. He has seen the light lie down in the dung heap and rise again in the corn. His thought passes along the row ends like a mole. What miraculous seed has he swallowed, that the unending sentence of his love flows out of his mouth like a vine clinging in the sunlight, and like water descending in the dark? Wonderful. Wendell Berry, thank you. From Tuscany, from Impruneta, yes, looking out on the fertile landscape of the Chianti from the Villa Il Buon Riposo, October 1998. Tramonto del Sole, sunset. A tractor flickers and ziggurats across a terraced line like a far-off firefly. A stream of milk smoke pours up behind a screen of junipers. Shadows fill the spaces in a forest of spreading pines. Furled cypresses gather round an ochre villa. The grapevines on a close-shaved hillside are combed into neat yellow-green rows between bands of russet earth. Blue-bottomed clouds mirror the contours of soft-shouldered mountains and the calls of small birds, piccolo, through the arriving quiet. Tramonto del Sole. So many good memories of times in Italia. Wendell Berry said, "The soil is the great connector of lives, the source and destination of all. It is the healer and restorer and resurrector, by which disease passes into health, age into youth, death into life. Without proper care for it, we can have no community, because without proper care for it, we can have no life." Here are a few other good quotes from all different times and people. President George Washington, "I had rather be on my farm than be emperor of the world." President Theodore Roosevelt, "Agriculture is now, as it's always been, the basis of civilization. The 6 million farms of the United States." Actually, I was curious now, thinking back as he's saying this, how many there are of farms left. "The 6 million farms of the United States form the basis of all other achievements of the American people and are more fruitful than all their other resources." Brenda Shipp, "My grandfather used to say that once in your life you need a doctor, a lawyer, a policeman, and a preacher. But every day, 3 times a day, you need a farmer." Well, that's a good one. I don't know who she is, but that was good. And Masanobu Fukuoka, "The simple hearth of the small farm is the true center of our universe." Well, if you're a farmer or live with a farmer or love farmers, you probably would agree with that. And I don't, but I do agree. But I love the farmers, especially the small ones, the small, passionate ones. I call them deep well dwellers, among other types of people passionate about nature and tending and stewarding it. Philip Booth, the Maine poet, has this poem, "Great Farm." "In April, when raining is sunlight, when dawn is a coarse young crow, as willows bend to feather, the great farm springs to grow. The orchard is loud, bees and blossoms claim the bough, a meadow of frogs, a sky of swallows, flood the air now. 2 girls ride 2 white horses, the world is green to plow, and sideways a big man with buckets sets hugely to milk a big cow." Thank you, Philip Booth. Beth Bentley, "Cowden's Farm," in memory of Roy Cowden, 1893 to 1961. "Do you recall the Giotto sky, that autumn day, when hand in hand we found the old man's garden? Rich with ourselves, we wondered at his fortune, those ornate trees, Byzantine globes, the ground sodden with color, fruit heavy as coin and moist as mouths warmed and stained our hands and lips. Crushed by our feet, such fleshly beauty, bounty, made all human giving paltry. Then, nimbused as a Coptic priest, our friend walked across the fields, unself-contained, face ruddy as his crop, exultant, as if the earth were his to lavish. He unrolled his oriental acres freely, as he had his summer of life, an offering in bronze, grape, pear, apple, pumpkin, zinnia, medallions for the young, whose own love waited, tasted, tested, scented from his dominion the scope and color of harvest. Cowden's Farm. Thank you, Beth Bentley, for that. And Laura Sherry's piece, On Our Farm. Indian Bruce and Big Charlie and Bohemian John have gone, and boys with white, tender hands and weak backs are cleaning the cowsheds and tossing the hay. I wonder, over there, if Big Charlie still wears a sprig of green in his hat, if Bohemian John's pipe has been shot away, and if Indian Bruce sings his weird lullabies coming home in the twilight. Thank you, Laura Sherry. I know some of you are wondering, when will he ask those questions he likes to ask? And, well, here they are. I do have questions for you, for us, about farms and farming and farmers and things related. Did you grow up on or near a farm? Or in farm country? Or have grandparents or other relatives who did or do? Do you know any farmers firsthand, especially local ones? Maybe ones whose farm stands you visit in summer. Well, I certainly happily support the ones around me here, one in particular whose produce is over the moon, lovingly grown, wildly fresh and beautiful and always delicious and appreciated, thanks to the farmer, Mary Hill. Do you have wonderful taste memories of locally grown produce, fruits or vegetables or dairy? Maybe like the kind that used to be delivered fresh to your home by the milkman in glass bottles. So fresh and cold. I can close my eyes and recall that time as a kid. Do you think much about where your food is grown or raised? Or how? Or who's raising or growing it, producing it, making it possible, and how caringly? Yes, do you think about that? And if so, what do you think about around that? I think that's become ever more important, have a feeling or a knowledge about that. And I would suggest that if someone, it's like a chef in a restaurant or at someone's home, they make something with love. You taste the love. So same with the farmers. They put their love in there. That's what we taste. The industrial things, not so much. Maybe not at all. Are you aware of important issues and concerns as we speak now about the health and well-being of our farmlands and our independent farmers and the foods we're eating, taking into our bodies? Well, a lot of it's actually greatly at risk. Very concerning. So I would suggest, if you're not, maybe to do some good homework and research to glean in, get a sense of that. So it could be helpful out there with the awareness. Well, when was the last time you visited a farm? What was your experience when you were there? I have actually lots of memories from childhood, partly about farms. I didn't grow up on one, but, occasionally would be taken to one. But I remember near a few towns over from where I used to live in New Jersey growing up, there was the Becker Milk Farm. We would be taken to see the dairy cows and the goings-on there. And there was also a wonderful miniature train that the kids would ride, open-air train around the big old farm, and the engineer in his blue-striped cap blowing a wonderful train whistle. What a joy that was every time there. I also remember going up to a family reunion when I was about 9 or 10 up in Avon, Connecticut, at a farm belonging to a relative, an uncle named Lothar Candles, of all things. He was a surgeon, a hunter, a gentleman farmer, and a flock of us, maybe 50 of us or more, traveled by a big rented bus from New Jersey, and we had a rollicking good time en route there. Everyone was so excited. I got to sit next to my grandfather. Any chance I got, I would sit next to him. And, as we motored along, I remember always him launching into a song in a whiskey voice. It was down on the farm. And he refrained it a few times with everyone else joining in on the bus, singing it. I never forgot it. And after it ended, he'd burst out laughing, as I did, but innocently, because I didn't know why it was so funny, just that he was so mirthful. And here it was. It was just a line that repeated, "Down on the farm, they all ask for you. The cows and the chickens and the horses asked for you." And that was it. That was it. Well, when I wrote this down to myself to make a note to tell you about it tonight, I said maybe the animals of the world's small farms and the farmlands yielding up the healthy grains and fruits and vegetables of small growers everywhere are asking for us, asking something of us, that they need our consciousness and conscientiousness, our serious support. So, I, of course, have other questions up my sleeve, but I think these are enough to chew on for now. So, let's go on. Let's go on. Maybe I should have poured a glass or two of fresh milk instead of water tonight. Just fittingly, I didn't think about that until right now. Edwin Carlisle Litzy, plowman. I sink my plow in the bare brown earth with the guide rope round my hand. The rich loam ripples behind the share like a dark wave on a strand. My sweating horse strains straight ahead while the trace chains fret his side and sightless slugs of the underdark from the shining plowshare slide. A gray mouse runs from his trampled nest. A lark sings in the sky, while sun and wind in the furrow meet, and there, like lovers, lie. A man, a horse, and a plow are we, far from the grinding din, opening the womb of Mother Earth, that the seed may enter in. Thank you, Edwin Litzy. And our farmer poet again, Wendell Berry, from A Timbered Choir. That's a collection of his. They're all wonderful in different ways. Whatever is foreseen in joy must be lived out from day to day. Vision held open in the dark by our 10,000 days of work. Harvest will fill the barn. For that the hand must ache, the face must sweat. And yet no leaf or grain is filled by work of ours. The field is tilled and left to grace. That we may reap, great work is done while we're asleep. When we work well, a Sabbath mood rests on our day and finds it good. Thank you, Wendell Berry. Sometimes I like to tell you about books that are worthwhile and fitting to a theme, and here are a couple. Nigel Peake, P-E-A-K-E, has this inviting one, In the Wilds, illustrating the charm of the countryside, an antidote to urbanity by way of bales of hay and what Irish quasi-postmen have to do with art. So this is a review in the Marginalian. In the Wilds, it's a collection of hand-drawn illustrations to capture the near-forgotten charm of rural life. He portrays the wild in a captivatingly structured pattern way, blending whimsy and order in stunning pen sketches, ink drawings, and soft, muted watercolors. He said the country is peaceful. It is a place to draw and work and be surrounded by things that we could never make in the wilds. You might enjoy that. Donald Hall's poem, Goose Feathers, from his collection, The Back Chamber. When I was 12, I sat by myself in the steamliner with a shoebox of sandwiches and deviled eggs my mother made, and ate everything right away as the train headed north by the Sound, where trestles of derelict trolley lines roosted nations of seagulls. From South Station, I took a taxi across Boston to a shabby black locomotive with coal car that pulled two rickety coaches. It puffed past long lines of empty commuter trains, past suburbs thick with houses, past the mill towns of Lawrence and Lowell, until the track curved into New Hampshire's pastures of Holstein cattle. My grandfather waited in his overalls at the depot with horse and buggy to carry me to the farmhouse, to fricasseed chicken, corn on the cob, and potatoes. At 9 o'clock, after shutting up the chickens from Skunk and Fox, we sat by the cabinet radio for Gabriel Heater, booming news of the war. I slept through the night on my goose feather bed. Thank you, Donald Hall. Goose feathers. Also from the Marginalian. How Thomas Jefferson pioneered the tomato, championed urban farming, and taught Americans to make coffee. The Founding Fathers' lesser-known but monumental contributions to modern culture. Well, this book is by Thomas Crofwell. It's titled Thomas Jefferson's Creme Brulee, How a Founding Father and His Slave, James Hemings, Introduced French Cuisine to America. But perhaps most fascinating in the account is the role he played, Jefferson, in championing vegetables and minimal animal products more than 200 years before Michael Pollan, popularizing indispensable plant species previously thought inedible, and even pioneering modern-day buzzword concepts like urban farming. So in the book, in his 1,000-foot-long vegetable garden, Jefferson grew almost all the vegetables, fruits, and herbs he needed to feed himself, his family, and their guests. Over a period of nearly 60 years, he experimented with 99 species of vegetables and 330 varieties. He also cultivated plants that were unknown in his neighbors' gardens, including tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and peanuts. So, might enjoy that read. And there's one more, is Henry Beston, a wonderful naturalist, on how our relationship to the earth reveals us to ourselves. The book is Northern Farm. He lived from 1888 to 1968. He said, if we are to live and have something to live for, let us remember, all of us, that we are the servants as well as the masters of our fields. It's an increasingly timely manifesto for reclaiming our humanity from the tyranny of technology, brimming with lyrical meditations on the limits of knowledge and happiness, simplicity, and the sacredness of smallness. It's a wonderful book. I have it again to reread parts of. Just one other slice from that. He says, how wise the ancients who never lost sight of the religious significance of the earth. They used the land to the full, draining, plowing, and manuring every inch, but their use was not an attack on its nature, nor was the ancient motherhood of earth ever forgotten in the breaking and preparing of the soil. So yes, that very central notion of stewardship, and not just the farmers, but all of us are stewards and need to be in different ways of Mother Earth as we can, and to support the bigger stewards there, meaning the vital ones. Felt experiences of bucolic kinds and like kinds. This poem for you from Holland, country of such deep farming, such a long history of farming, Europe's agricultural epicenter, certainly one of them. Dit Zakterland, this gentle land. Cloth-white cows float by, reflected in the moss-cool water that streams through this soft land where centuries pass on summer afternoons. I'm going to take just a moment, if you allow me, because there's some, I don't know what all the rumpus is behind me, but there's some noise. Let's see if I can fix that for us. If you can't hear it, then it's not an issue, but I can. I will be right with you. Okay, well, I think that's coming from a neighboring place, so there's nothing I can do about that. And we will carry on. I think it's water running, large amounts of it. Yes, so back to Wendell Berry for a moment. Such a hero, this farmer poet. He's a hero to many, I'm sure. Farmer, steward, farmer activist, Wendell Berry. Much of this is from on writers who farmed. So it says, much of his inspiration comes from his Kentucky farm, which has been in his family for more than 200 years. He has been an outspoken champion of land stewardship and has campaigned against what he considers, quote, bad farming for many years. He said the world and our life in it are conditional gifts. We have the world to live in and the use of it to live from, on the condition that we will take good care of it. And to take good care of it, we have to know it, and we have to know how to take care of it. And to know and to be willing to take care of it, we have to love it. And we've ignored all that. Well, certainly he's calling us to things, isn't he? I mentioned a few quotes from some various presidents back in time, and then there was, here's one by Dwight D. Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, who said back in time, farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. And Booker T. Washington said, no race can prosper until it learns there is as much dignity in tilling a field as in writing a poem. Thank you, Booker T. Washington. I never heard that before. I came across this actually today as I was putting last touches on the program. We feed theworld.org, a global photographic initiative coordinated by the Gaia Foundation. It's an invitation to reflect on the food we eat, where it comes from, who grew it, and how we are connected. It encourages us to support a more just food system that nourishes us and the earth, one led and controlled by small-scale fishers and farmers using agroecological techniques, not by corporations chasing profit at all costs. And there's something I did not know in here. We're often told by corporations, governments, and the media that without a high-tech, chemically intensive industrial food system, we would soon starve. Featuring 50 communities and the work of world-renowned photographers, various people they mentioned, we make this initiative that cuts through this misinformation to creatively tell the stories of the farmers and fishers who really feed the world. And if you go to the site, wefeedtheworld.org, you can read the stories and beautiful photographs of the people. So it says, from the icy waters of northern Sweden to the humid depths of the Amazon, we explore the triumphs of small-scale farmers and fisher people who feed themselves and others whilst caring for nature. They produce over 70% of the food we eat globally, and they do it on less than a quarter of the world's farmland using regenerative techniques that protect biocultural diversity and help reverse the effects of climate change. Their practices and knowledge that they hold offer us solutions to many of the crises we currently face, from the mass extinction of species, the pollution and depletion of our soils, waterways, and oceans, to the diminishing health and well-being of our communities. We Feed the World brings this to light in the face of the challenges they and we face today. Well, bravo to them. A little bit more from Wendell Berry, because he has so much to say, so many enlightening things to say, but I just wanted really to mention especially his book, Bringing It to the Table on Farming and Food. Really good read. And in there, 2 quotes to share. To husband is to use with care, to keep, to save, to make last, to conserve. Old usage tells it that there is a husbandry also of the land, of the soil, of the domestic plants and animals, obviously because of the importance of these things to the household. And so it appears that most and perhaps all of industrial agriculture's manifest failures are the result of an attempt to make the land produce without husbandry. Yeah, I'm still musing on that. The small family farm is one of the last places, and they're getting rarer every day, where men and women, and girls and boys too, can answer that call to be an artist, to learn to give love to the work of their hands. It is one of the last places where the maker, and some farmers still do talk about, quote, making the crops, is responsible from start to finish for the thing made. This certainly is a spiritual value. Vern Bright's poem, Good Soil. This is good soil, begetter of tall grain, blackberry, slow, rough bramble from the rock, barley and stinging rye, cool mullein, dock, heart's ease, and cornflower under the sounding rain, the sensitive corn, root tip and sordid leaf, in misty shafts of green leaning to the drip of gold rain music slow and sweet, the grip of bean vine over its heart, the gorgeous brief miracle of grass. This is good soil. Out of this earth life blooms a day, a year. Into this earth life goes, the dark loam, dear cozener of flesh, the breaker of long toil, meal of marl, warm shelly, sand, and stone. This is good soil, to cover the taken bone. Thank you, Vern Bright. Yes, how little many contemplate all these things, let alone be grateful for them, and the lands, the farms themselves, the farmers, the growers who tend them and make the food possible and edible for us. Rob Bresney has this question: who creates the world you live in? Who grows, harvests, ships, packages, and sells you your food? Who provides you with the water you need to be alive? Who made your clothes? Who heals you? Who makes your medicine? Who makes it possible for you to have electricity and heat? Who built the roads and the vehicles used to bring you food, clothes, medicine, and other things you need to be alive? So from a collection of mine in the works, actually called the Book of Thank Yous, this is the first one in that book. For the milk, frothed and poured into my morning coffee, and the milkman who delivered it, bottled and cold, to the grocery store, and the one who placed it on the shelf, and the other who checked it out with a smile. For the dairy farmer who raised and milked the soft and white and brindled cows, the cows that gave it to the farmer's pail, the pastures of grass and clover that fed the cows, and the barn that sheltered them. For the rain and sun that helped the pastures grow and green, the clouds that gave the rain, and the sky that held them up, and the earth that gave the fertile soil for the dream and streams of milk to even begin. Thank you. Wanted to mention there was a farmer back in time, and especially in the 1940s. His name was Louis Bromfield, and there's a book about him, a really inspiring book called "The Planter of Modern Life," about this farmer, Louis Bromfield. He later in his life gave a definition of a good farmer, and it was lofty and long. A farmer, he said, should be, quote, a horticulturalist, a mechanic, a botanist, an ecologist, a veterinarian, a biologist, and many other things. He should have an open mind that was, quote, ready to absorb new knowledge and new ideas, but knowledge was, quote, not enough. He needed, most importantly, two traits which, quote, could not be acquired, which were, quote, almost mystical qualities. These were, quote, a passion for the soil and, quote, an understanding and sympathy with animals. In other words, Bromfield thought, a good farmer needed to be a little touched. And he said, a good farmer is the happiest of men, for he inhabits a world that is filled with wonder and excitement, over which he rules as a small god. How about that? There's a beautiful essay, actually, that, again, Wendell Berry wrote, titled Contempt for Small Places. A lifelong celebrator he was of the grandeur of smallness, and a self-described small writer and small farmer. He reflected this way: the health of the oceans depends on the health of rivers. The health of rivers depends on the health of small streams. The health of small streams depends on the health of their watersheds. The health of the water is exactly the same as the health of the land. The health of small places is exactly the same as the health of large places. We cannot immunize the continents and the oceans against our contempt for small places and small streams. Small destructions add up, and finally, they are understood collectively as large ones. Yes. Well, we'll carry on with him a little bit more. Maybe one more piece, I think, but we're coming now into the last handful of our sharings and musings together. W.D. Earhart, the farmer. Each day I go into the fields to see what is growing and what remains to be done. It's always the same thing. Nothing is growing. Everything needs to be done. Plow, harrow, disc, water, Pray till my bones ache and hands rub blood raw with honest labor. All that grows is the slow and transient intensity of need. I have sown my seed on soil, guaranteed by poverty to fail, but I don't complain, except to passers-by who ask me why I work such barren earth. They would not understand me if I stooped to lift a rock and hold it like a child, or laughed, or told them it is their poverty I labor to relieve. For them, I complain. A farmer of dreams knows how to pretend. A farmer of dreams knows what it means to be patient. Each day I go into the fields. Thank you, W.D. Earhart, from his collection, The Beautiful, or just Beautiful Wreckage. Linda Hogan, Celebration, Birth of a Colt. When we reach the field, she is still eating the heads of yellow flowers, and pollen has turned her whiskers gold. Lady, her stomach bulges out, the ribs have grown wide. We wait, our bare feet dangling in the horse trough, warm water where goldfish brush our smooth ankles. We wait while the liquid breaks down Lady's dark legs, and that slick, wet colt, like a black tadpole, darts out, beginning at once to sprout legs. She licks it to its feet, the membrane still there, red, transparent, the sun coming up shines through. The sky turns bright with morning, and the land with pollen blowing off the corn. Land that will always own us. Everywhere it is red. Thank you, Linda Hogan. It's from her collection, Red Clay. It's a poem of mine for All Hallows Eve, but the Celtic celebration of Samhain, which is spelled Samhain. The end of harvest time, when Celts led their cattle down from their summer pastures, when sacred bonfires were set immensely alight, beneath the also-burning stars, to cleanse and protect, a liminal time to cross easily to the other world, and make way for the spirits, the fairies, the Eossi, to enter this one, bring their good fortune to farmers and crops, livestock and lovers, and receive in return grateful offerings of food and drink. A hallowed time when departed souls revisited their earthly homes seeking comfort. Long gone kin were beckoned and welcomed to places set for them at tables of the living, whose faces glowed in soft pools of waxing candlelight. When mumming and guising surprised the openers of neighboring doors, and people in costume or full disguise recited verses to the ready lookers and listeners, and left rewarded with bits of sweet and other treats. And many played games with apples and hazelnuts in the first frosted autumn air. And all marked the turn toward solstice and winter, found solace in their deep-rooted symbols, their comforting rituals, embraced the arriving dark half of the year, and their spoken and silent passages through these realms of myth and mystery. Samhain. The mise en scène at the Masseria. This is back in 2006. I was staying at a restored 16th century olive mill, a masseria in Puglia, named Il Frantoio in Ostuni. And I had this experience of feeling so connected to the land. The mise en scène at the masseria. Late at night, a late December night, I walk barefoot outside, over rain-graced marble, my feet like fingers, feeling the coolness, soles finding the smoothness, and the softness of 400 years of harvests and history, rain and sun. I savor the wildness of the wind in the olive and myrtle trees, and the old masseria, sleeping here in the green heart of Puglia. Sunnybrook, from Sunnybrook Farm, West Brookfield, Massachusetts, a rural place that belonged to dear friends once upon a time. This was June of 1999. Sunnybrook. Squirrels have nibbled the pine cones into palm trees near the orchard where the wildflowers float. Pools of apple-green shade puddle under knobby-kneed trees, and the sunny brook flows. From Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, back in 2017, thinking about places now paved over, some citified, but that back in time were farmland, open agricultural land. Dutch farmers called it Cobblesill, this conical place, whose cobblestones you walk and ride over were right ballast for 18th century ships sailing over the wild, wind-swept ocean, whose plots of earth you pass, where jasmine, roses, and morning glories bloom and perfume, were hearts of farms for Dutch tillers, farmers in 1640 days. And then foundations for the fine high houses of prospering merchants, ship owners, sea captains, watch-fobbed bankers. This cobbled place, gentling through generations of pre- and post-revolutionary times, of pluperfect and now leafily present times. Let's ascend a moment into the Andes Mountains, Altiplano. For tens of thousands of years, 12,000 feet above sea level, on the cold shoulders of the Andes, wild tubers have thrived. Through strong winds, poor soil, bone-chilling temperatures, the earliest ancestors of the ubiquitous potato we know en masse, on starch, on our plates today. But a far cry in shape, color, taste, nativeness from the dozens of varieties nimble Andean farmers learned over millennia to cultivate in their terraced altiplano gardens. From orange to black, marble to soccer ball size. To read about wonders like this, the tenacity, variety, wild nonconformity of these crops, is to muse on what has been learned or leached out as a culture and agriculture. What naturally wise ways have been lost, forgotten, that the mountain, Chilean, and Peruvian farmers still preserve, still remember, high above the world. Let's take a cue from the fleetingness of the weather, the seasons, time, chance, life of the land, shall we? We can. Let's make hay while the sun shines. Make song while our voices shine. Make love while our bodies shine. Make feasts while our appetites shine. Make each day bright with heart, come rain or shine. Next to last, for now, Rainer Maria Rilke's poem from his Sonnets to Orpheus, number 7. To praise is the whole thing. A man who can praise comes toward us like ore out of the silences of rock. His heart that dies presses out for others a wine that is fresh forever. When the god's energy takes hold of him, his voice never collapses in the dust. Everything turns to vineyards. Everything turns to grapes made ready for harvest by his powerful south. The mold in the catacomb of the king does not suggest that his praising is lies, nor the fact that the gods cast shadows. He is one of the servants who does not go away, who still holds through the doors of the tomb trays of shining fruit. Thank you, Rilke. To praise is the whole thing. And last for now, friends, a poem from New York City, from Nomad, from January 2016. Actually, that is called that little part of that neighborhood above Madison Square Park in the city. And I was actually in a bit of a nomadic state at that point. Do not go fallow. Do not let the verdant field of your body go fallow. live without vital streams of sun, water, warmth, tilling, seeding. This precious earth, lush self, so ripe, so rich a harvest of gatherings, yieldings, brought to life with intimate, ardent tending. Do not go fallow, my friends. Ever. Thank you again for leaning in, for listening and feeling in, and two, always for sharing these shows round with others. Feel free to post the show link or playlist on to friends or to your social media so we can keep growing by good word of mouth. I also invite and greatly appreciate all your comments, reflections, and affirmations. Likewise, whatever donations you send along, they do help me carry on. Is there a theme you'd like me to shape a future broadcast around? If so, I'd like to know. Send an email with your desire. Colin@thepoetorialist.com. And what about your experience of this show on Down on the Farm? I'd like to know that too. If you are making a contribution, wonderful. You can use Venmo to fivefold, Fivefold, at pipeline.com, or PayPal to the same email. Or simply mail a check to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island 02891. Or you can donate through the site, thepoetorialist.com, my site, and the Donate tab. And yes, patrons can sponsor or host me now and again as a working poet in residence for an agreed time in an agreed place in the U.S. or elsewhere in the world. Create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them. Email me and we can explore. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online, on YouTube, on the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you'll lean in soon again. Until then, dear listeners, let's praise the labors and passions of farmers everywhere in the world, present and past, and the farmlands and art and heart of farming that feed our bodies and cultures, that are so virtuous and bounteous and so vital for us to fiercely preserve, protect, and defend. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.